Chris Dickerson is one of most inspirational bodybuilders in the history of the sport, not only because of what he achieved with his physique, but because of the impact he had on the industry as a person. He was the first Black, gay, and over 40 bodybuilder to be crowned Mr. Olympia. Not only that, he was one of the shortest athletes to win at just 5'6", and he only started training at 24. Chris's story is one of a bodybuilder training against all odds, both physically and psychologically. He was starting off in an industry he was too old and short to begin, with a race and orientation most people wouldn't accept. This is how he proved everyone wrong. The ideal physique is one with broad shoulders, a small, tapered waist, shapely and developed legs. The neck, arms, and calves should all measure the same or close to it. It is equally important to work on your posing in order to show off what development you have attained to your best advantage. Being a competitor can often be very rough. Physique competitions are difficult to judge. Learning to win is easy, but knowing how to lose is a much truer test of the stuff we are made of. Being a competitor can bring out the very best and the worst in our nature. Be prepared. Have your poses down pat. Practice, practice, and practice. Expect to be nervous, but try to enjoy yourself on stage. And if you do not place number one, blame yourself and not the judges. Keep in mind, no one will remember your losses. People only remember the winner. Chris Dickerson was born in 1939 as one of 3 triplets in the heart of Alabama. His mother was Mahala Ashley Dickerson, one of the most inspirational women for African Americans at the time. A lifelong friend to Rosa Parks, Mahala was the first Black female attorney in Alabama and the second Black woman admitted to the Indiana bar in 1951. Even at a young age, Chris was inspired by his mother, showing him that race or gender may set you back, but with enough determination, they would never stop you. At school, Chris always had a flair for athletics, but his main passion was drama and singing. Hoping to one day become an opera singer, Chris went on to study at the New York Academy of Dramatic Art after high school. There, his singing teacher believed Chris would have a stronger voice if he had a stronger chest, and believed weight training was the best way to get there. At first, Dickerson was just training for function. He wanted to become a better singer. However, after a short trip to his aunt over in California, Chris saw a photo of Bill Pearl in a muscle magazine and realized the potential of what weight training could offer. Dickerson became obsessed with the lifestyle. He even spent time in LA and even began training at Bill's gym to learn from the man himself. Bill was so impressed with Dickerson's attitude that he started to train the young bodybuilder immediately. That last one being the most important. Chris knew he'd have problems with his race and sexual orientation. Racism and homophobia were rampant. However, he knew this would only affect how he was viewed as a person, which he knew he could overcome, whereas his height would affect how he was judged as a bodybuilder, a factor he couldn't influence as easily. He started training seriously at the age of 24, unheard of for anyone in the sport, especially when you're aiming for trophies like Mr. Universe and Olympia. In 1965, 2 years after starting training, Dickerson entered in his first competition, Mr. Long Beach, coming in at 3rd place. Rather than viewing it as a failure, Chris was happy with the results and still remembers the 1965 Mr. Long Beach as one of his favorite events. To this day, this trophy remains my sentimental favorite. I was never to be the same again after winning my first trophy. Brimming with motivation, Dickerson entered 12 competitions back on the East Coast in 1966 and won every single one. Within a year, Chris Dickerson had become a bodybuilding sensation, and it was only a matter of time before he would realize he was worthy of an Olympia. After 1966, Chris had become a hot topic in the bodybuilding world. Appearing in magazines and receiving a lot of coverage, he was fast becoming one of the most popular bodybuilders of his time. Dickerson believed the secret to his success was all about proportions, with his calves, neck, and biceps all measuring exactly the same size. He was perfect for the aesthetic direction the sport had been heading in. Another reason it's believed Chris did so well was his acting talent. His time in the New York Academy of Dramatic Art showed him the best ways to present himself on stage to make the most out of his posing and overall physique. He wanted to take him to the next level and went back to Bill Pearl with one goal in mind: Mr. America. By 1967, Bill and Chris were training 5 days a week and posing on the 6th, all in preparation for the Mr. America competition that year. Unfortunately, he didn't win, placing 6th overall, but he kept going. By 1970, Chris was both Mr. America, AAU, and Mr. Universe and NABA. Dickerson was dominating both the AAU and the NABA federations, and even moved over to England to win more NABA titles as they were European-based. He would continue to win NABA's Mr. Universe competitions for many years before focusing in on a bigger prize, the IFBB's Mr. Olympia. Chris Dickerson started his bodybuilding career in the IFBB in 1979. He was 40 years old, the age most athletes in the sport would be retired at, but Chris was just getting warmed up. He wanted to become Mr. Olympia before he retired. It felt like a now or never situation, as he was competing against bodybuilders in the prime of their lives, while he was now middle-aged. It was a rocky start. Coming 6th in his first Olympia, the Australian Bodybuilders Association believed it to be the case too, and awarded Dickerson the winners to fight back against the IFBB. But Chris wanted to win outright, with all judges on board, and set his sights on the next Olympia to secure an honest victory. Unfortunately, the following year, the same result occurred. Dickerson came second again, only this time to Arnold's close friend Franco Columbu. And again, Chris took the defeat. He considered giving up on returning until Canadian official Winston Roberts told him, "Chris, if you don't come back, you are just going to make it easy for all the others. They won't have to deal with you." This is where the magic happened. After Winston's advice, Chris decided to give it all one last shot. And in 1982, at the age of 43, Chris Dickerson finally became Mr. Olympia. This was a historic moment for both Dickerson and sport. He was the first Black and gay competitor to become Mr. Olympia. He was also the oldest at the time to ever become Mr. Olympia. After finally achieving what he set out to accomplish, Chris retired from bodybuilding as one of the most influential people the sport has ever seen. However, he did return for one last dance in 1994 to win the Olympia again in the Masters 50+ category. The unique thing about Chris's training style is that it was a middle ground between the high-rep, lightweight workouts of Frank Zane and the low-rep, overly heavy sessions of Mike Mentzer. It was a perfect balance of both size and aesthetic training, and the exercises Dickerson used had a beauty to their simplicity. He claimed you could get all training you need from just using free weights. He thought very little of machines. This quote from Dickerson accurately describes his passion for this style of lifting. Nothing comes close when building the necessary foundations for title-winning physiques than training with free weights. A good example of Chris's workouts would be his bench press routine. He was reported to set up a bench with 400 pounds on the bar and squeeze out rep after rep. This allowed Chris to fully work his muscles with a heavy weight while still keeping proper form, a fantastic middle ground. Keeping it simple, Chris would perform the basic exercises with the idea of developing his body from the inside out, concentrating on the cosmetic side of his physique last, ensuring that he had enough clay that he could sculpt down later. He was a firm believer in building the foundation before making any other adjustments, to take your time and be patient with your body. You can stimulate the muscles and you separate them, isolate them, and put them together and work them in all sorts of directions and angles and positions, but they are going to come out the way they are going to come out. The secret, of course, is to include variety in your training, but your body is programmed for a certain look